Dad who forced son 6 on treadmill addresses the court before sentencing, calls behavior inexcusable. Christopher Gregor addressed his ex, the boy's mother, for the first time since his DEATH in court, before she gave an emotional statement of her own, saying one can only hope karma comes to him quickly. Christopher Gregor, the New Jersey dad accused of unaliving his 6-year-old son after forcing him to run on a treadmill as he increased the speed, has been sentenced. Following a month-long trial and nearly 2 days of juror deliberations, Gregor was previously found guilty of child endangerment and aggravated manslaughter for the unaliving of his son, Corey Micciolo. Gregor was found not guilty of first-degree unaliving, however. On Friday, he was given 20 years for aggravated manslaughter, which he'll have to serve 85% of before being eligible for parole. For child endangerment, he was given 5 years with a 858-day credit. The judge ruled the 2 sentences should be served consecutively. Though Gregor didn't testify in his own defense during the trial, he gave a statement to the court before he was sentenced, first addressing his son's mother and his ex, Brianna Micciolo. Brianna, we haven't talked since Corey passed away. With everything that has been said, I just want to tell you, I'm sorry we lost Corey. He was, to say simply, the best, he began. I know we'll miss him for the rest of our lives. Calling his time with Corey the best years of his life, Gregor remembered his son as a happy, energetic, loving, radiant young boy who flourished in his short life. That will be how I remember him. Corey, wherever you are, I just want to say I'm proud of you and everything that you did. The last months of his life, us 3, Brianna, Corey, and me. We spent more time together than apart, he continued. Recalling their time together, he said, I saw how much Brianna loved Corey, how much he loved her, and how well we could co-parent together. Those memories and all the good times, they'll be what I remember, and they helped me get through the tough days. I hope they can help you too, Brianna. I'm sorry you believe I could have done this to our son, and it pains me to know that you view my actions those months together as ingenuine, that I could have hurt the most important person in my life, Gregor continued before directly addressing the treadmill incident. What happened on March 20 was inexcusable. To you, Brianna, your family, and mine, I want to apologize. You had to see Corey treated that way. He never deserved it. I understand the single moment will overshadow all the others, but it's not representative of who I am, who Corey was, and his relationship with me and him, said Gregor. I want to assure you that on April 2nd, the day of the boy's unaliving, I did nothing to cause Corey's passing. I didn't hurt my son. I loved him and I still do. I regret not bringing him to the hospital sooner. I didn't know how sick he was. I just thought he was tired. Corey is gone. He had so much to give this world, and he still can. What we do in his memory, for his memory, things we would want us to do. That's all we have now, he concluded, before asking the judge to sentence me fairly and take into consideration my entire life and not just based on the 12 days from the treadmill incident to the boy's unaliving. Family members on Brianna's side, however, pushed for the maximum sentence possible. What he said is not true. If he has the chance to do it again, he'll do it again, said the boy's grandfather. His grandmother called him a monster, who she would never forgive. In a very emotional moment, Brianna took the stand to address the court, wearing a t-shirt with her son's face on it, while saying she's an advocate for justice. I stand here to plead for justice that Corey rightfully deserves and to press for the maximum sentence of Christopher Gregor, whose actions inflicted irreparable harm in our lives. She began, calling the relationship a traumatic journey defined by manipulation, abuse, and untimely, unspeakable loss. I'm here to be his voice and tell his story. Not once have you seen the defendant shed a tear for Corey in the last 3.5 years since he unalived him, and today was fake. She continued, addressing Gregor's statement. I don't believe a word he says, and I don't accept any apologies. His only remorse was for himself because he got caught and convicted. He never had an ounce of love for Corey. He never hugged him. He never praised him. He never told him he was proud of him or he did a good job, said Micciolo. He punished Corey every chance he could get. Instead of being a good role model for Corey, he decided to beat him to unalive him. Why? Were you jealous of him? Did you hate me so much that you took it out on Corey? She asked, before calling him a monster. One can only hope karma comes to him quickly, she said, getting overcome with emotion as she spoke. Are you that crazy that you convinced yourself you didn't do this? I hate you. I will never forgive you. You have stolen my full potential at happiness, and I will never have my son back. My daughter will never get to meet her brother. My boyfriend will never get to be the father the defendant should have been to my son. She added she believes Gregor will unalive her if he ever gets out of prison. During the trial, jurors saw surveillance footage from the Atlantic Heights clubhouse in Barnegat, New Jersey that dated back to March 20, 2021, where Gregor, who did not testify in the trial, was seen forcing the boy to use a treadmill. Corey fell off the machine 6 times in surveillance footage, but was pulled back up on the treadmill and made to continue running. At one point in the video, Gregor even appeared to bite his son. The boy did not make it at the hospital on April 2nd, the same day he was brought there by his father. Gregor allegedly left his son alone in his hard time moments. Sorry, guys, I'm just not going to say these words. Anyway, before leaving the hospital altogether and not answering calls from his ex, the boy's mother, or police. While Gregor's legal team suggested Corey didn't make it because of sepsis from pneumonia, a consulting doctor determined from a post of bruises and marks on the child that the pattern distribution and character of the injuries was consistent with ongoing abuse and found that the manner of unaliving was homicide. Prosecutors alleged it was the father's abuse which caused his unaliving.
Your Honor, my name is Brianna Micciolo, and I appear before you today not only as a grieving mother, but also an advocate for justice. On behalf of my son, Corey, I stand here before you to plead for justice that Corey rightfully deserves and to press for the maximum sentence of Christopher Gregor, whose actions have inflicted irreparable harm in our lives. For you to fully understand the gravity of the situation, I will flash back to the July of 2013. This day marks the beginning of a traumatic journey defined by manipulation, abuse, and ultimately an unspeakable loss. At 16, I first met the defendant, who was 21 at the time. He proceeded to feed me drugs, alcohol, and took complete advantage of me, which led to the conception of Corey. From day one of my pregnancy, I knew I would keep Corey regardless of the way he was conceived. Corey didn't ask to be brought into this world, and I knew I owed it to him to bring him into this world with unconditional love. Corey was and still is my life, my world, and my everything. I would also like to speak about my past, which I'm not 100% proud of. You heard a lot about it throughout the trial, and so did a lot of the world. It was very upsetting for that to come out because I've worked extremely hard for many years to be where I am today. I admit I abused drugs, but during the trial, it was made out that for some reason, my son deserved to be killed because his mom was a drug addict. That is absolutely disgusting. I stand here today, clean and sober, and I know Corey would be so proud of me. Unfortunately, my son is no longer here to tell his story, so I'm here to be his voice and tell his story along with all the others sitting in the gallery who have continued to stand by me. Not once have you seen the defendant shed a tear for Corey in the last 3.5 years since he killed him. And today was fake. I don't believe a word he said, and I don't accept any apologies. He has no remorse for any of the actions he committed. And his only remorse, like you saw today, was for himself because he got caught and convicted. Another reason I could think of is, everything he had done to Corey was done out of spite towards me. Another reason I could think of is he's sick in the head and used Corey as his punching bag. On April 2nd of 2021, it was not the first time that he abused Corey, but it was the last time. He never had an ounce of love for Corey. And to the defendant, Corey was just an inconvenience in his life. He never hugged him. He never praised him. He never told him he was proud of him or that he did a good job. He punished Corey every chance that he could get, and I cannot even begin to imagine what my son dealt with behind closed doors with this man. On April 2nd of 2021, I hesitantly dropped Corey off at the defendant's home, which is a mistake that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I kissed my son goodbye unknowingly for the last time. I wish I knew what was going to happen and I would never let him go. At 3 p.m. the same day, I received a phone call from the defendant where he stated Corey was very sick and he was taking him to the hospital, and then hung up on me after he asked for my insurance card. As an extremely concerned mother, I called him back with no answer and continued to do so along with texts for hours to find out where Corey was and what was going on. For those few hours, my mother and I called every hospital in the area with no luck. The very last hospital finally said he was there. Then there was a knock on the door. It was our local police there to tell me Corey had passed away. My healthy 6-year-old boy who was just alive as well with me a few hours ago is dead. My heart dropped and my whole body collapsed from the shock that took over my whole body. I was unable to breathe. My mind was racing, and I felt like I was no longer inside my body. All I remember is screaming that they had the wrong child because Corey was fine this morning. I actually convinced myself that it wasn't him and they had the wrong kid for a while. My next question was, where is Chris? I needed to know what happened, and he was nowhere to be found until the next day when I found out he was in Tennessee. No one was able to tell me what happened to Corey except Corey died at the hospital. I couldn't even see my son until a week later at his funeral because his body was evidence. The defendant took away my chance to say goodbye to Corey while he was passing away, and not once did he pick up the phone he was using to converse with many of his girlfriends, to call 911, to seek medical attention, which could have potentially saved Corey's life. Instead, he allowed Corey to suffer silently for hours. Once he realized how bad it was, he threw him in the car and then proceeded to drive 15 minutes to the hospital. He slowly walked Corey into the hospital with no sense of urgency, even when he knew how bad his condition was. I fully believe that if we took Corey to the hospital as soon as he received the lethal blow, he could still be here today. There were many steps he could have taken to save my son's life. Instead, he sat home and let Corey slowly die for hours. Every day since April 2nd has been an absolute living nightmare, and it is now the new reality for me to replay Corey's horrific death repeatedly in my head. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning and the last thing I think about before I fall asleep at night. I dread normal conversation with people because I always get asked, how many kids do you have? I say 2, and they follow up asking how old are they? That's when the grief sinks in, and I have to tell them my 6-year-old was killed by his father. It is such an indescribable feeling. When I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, a sense of guilt was all I could feel. I wanted more kids, but how do I love another child? Is it fair to Corey? That is all I could think about. Now I know this is not true, and I love my daughter with all my heart, but I always will feel an emptiness, no matter how many children I have. My new reality is explaining to my daughter what happened to her big brother and why is he not here. I live in fear every day every second of the day that something will happen to my daughter and I will lose her too. It's a horrible feeling and it causes me such bad anxiety. I take her to the cemetery to see Corey every weekend. And at a year and a half old, she knows where Corey is buried. It is every week. It is heartbreaking. She sits and plays with the cars and toys we left there for him. I live in a nightmare and I would never wish this feeling or how I must live with on my worst enemy. Throughout everything he did to Corey, Corey still loved him. He looked up to you. And he still wanted to be, I'm sorry. And he still wanted him to be like a real father who treated him like a son. Instead of being a good role model for Corey, he decided to beat him to death. Why? Were you jealous of him? Did you hate me so much that you took it out on Corey? Were you abused as a child? Not that that's a good excuse, because you could have overcome it and became the protector he needed as a child, but instead you became a killer. There was no amount of love in his actions and only a disturbing amount of hate. It seems like he hated Corey simply because I loved him, and he felt deprived of that love. He couldn't even control himself for long because after the first visit with my son, he started abusing him. My son didn't even know him and he was beating him. He was abusing him from the first time. I thank God. I hate you for not letting me say goodbye to my son, but I thank God your face is not the last one he saw. I'm sorry. What this monster did was pathetic, disgusting, and I wish him nothing but the worst. One could only hope that karma comes to him quickly. After all he's done, you would hope he'd admit what he's done, but no. Instead of grieving, I had to fight for justice for 3 long years. Go to trial just to relive everything. I had to see that video that I never wanted to see. I didn't have to see it until 2 weeks before this trial. I went 3 years without seeing it. Oh, I'm sorry. Just for you to be found guilty anyway. What was the point of that? Just to make it worse for us? Are you that crazy that you convinced yourself you didn't do this? I hate you. I will never forgive you. And I'm going to skip that one. You have stolen my full potential at happiness. And I will never have my son back. My family will never feel whole again. My daughter will never get to meet her brother. And my boyfriend will never get to be the father that the defendant should have been to our son. He took my whole world away from me. He has shown and proven to be that special kind of dirtbag he claimed I was. Your Honor, all this monster had to do was say he did not want to be a father. No one would have made him. I would have happily continued to raise my son alone with the help of my family. He had many opportunities not to do this to him. He is in this current situation due to his own actions, and every day he will have to live with this. He deserves nothing less than to experience the pain, suffering, and isolation that he inflicted on Corey. I hope that every moment he spends in prison is haunted by the torment of knowing he killed my child. I fear when Christopher Gregor gets out of jail, whenever that is, he will come after my family and I again. I fear for our lives. His twisted mind truly thinks that I caused all this and that he's in jail because of me, even though he's here because he killed him. I truly believe if he ever gets out and gets the opportunity, he will kill me. Your Honor, Corey should be going into 5th grade in September, hanging out with his friends, playing sports and enjoying his life. Instead, he will never experience finding his first girlfriend, graduating high school, falling in love, driving a car, getting married, or having kids. Christopher robbed him of his entire future, and Corey could have easily lived until he was 80 years old. He stole over 70 years from Corey and thousands of memories he could have made. I will never see my son again. I miss him and I love him so much. There are countless reasons Christopher deserves the maximum sentence. He rejected what I considered a generous plea deal, which shows how selfish and ignorant he is as a person. I beg you to not allow this injustice to continue, and he must face the full consequences of his actions. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Your Honor.
Thank you for coming, Smith.
Your Honor, I want to start by thanking you for allowing me to address you today. I will not stand here and tell you that I forgive this monster, because I don't, and I will never. You'll never hear those words come out of my mouth. The actions of this man have greatly affected my life, the lives of my 2 daughters, my 2 sons, and my granddaughter, and 19,000 others from around the world, including Corey's teachers and doctors. On April 2nd, 2021, this man lost control and he beat my grandson, and he denied him medical attention for several hours, only taking him to the hospital by car when Corey was within an hour of death, and leaving him to die with only a nurse and hospital staff around him, denying my daughter and myself to be with Corey, and denying Corey the comfort of having people who loved him with him as he took his last breath. This is not a man who should be shown mercy. My daughter slept in my bed many nights since Corey was murdered because she was afraid to be alone. We have nightmares. I see that treadmill video in my nightmares. That video that this monster sat in this courtroom and watched and didn't shed a tear, not 1 ounce of remorse. I'm being treated for several mental health disorders since Corey was murdered: PTSD, nightmare disorder, depression and anxiety. I'm on several medications to get through the day. I can't work. I'm no longer living, Your Honor. I'm existing. Your Honor, this man took advantage of a 16-year-old child when he was 21. He used alcohol and drugs, and Corey was conceived as a result. Corey was the dirty little secret that Chris never wanted anyone to know about. He demanded an abortion. He met Corey when he came home from the hospital. He knew Corey existed, but hid the truth from his family for years. None of the Gregors wanted Corey. David Gregor told me Corey should have been aborted. This man has a long history of alcohol abuse, 2 DUIs, drug abuse, domestic violence resulting in a restraining order, and child abuse that started long before he had visitations with Corey. He abused an ex-girlfriend's son while they were living in the Gregor home in Monroe Township. The DCPMP case was closed after the girl moved out of state. The system failed Corey, but Chris Gregor and his family also failed Corey. This man has never had to answer for any bad behavior. It seems it always went away somehow. Your Honor, my life will never be the same. Corey was wanted, loved, and doted upon by my family. We enjoyed watching and helping Brianna raise him. I have difficulty going into a store and seeing little boy clothes and toys that Corey would have loved. In September, when everyone is preparing their kids to go back to school, I wonder what backpack or shoes Corey would have chosen. I can't go to my nephew's house or my great nephew's birthday parties because seeing them makes me sad. Corey should be at those parties. I find myself looking at kids who are the age Corey would have been, and I wonder what Corey would look like now. I cry several times a day. My physical appearance has changed. My health has declined. I've aged. I'm angry, sad, bitter, and mostly I'm broken. This man has shown no remorse as he sat through the trial. I watched every second, and he didn't shed a tear for Corey. He's had discussions with fellow inmates about wanting Brianna to be killed. I'm sure he doesn't think we heard about that, but with social media, things do get out. This is not a man who can be rehabilitated. My family lives in fear, wondering if he will attempt to have my daughter killed, because we all know what he's capable of. My granddaughter visits her brother's grave and sits on the ground and plays with toys left there for Corey by strangers from all over the world. This makes me so sad, watching Brianna watch her daughter play at Corey's resting place. Corey wanted a baby sister so bad, and now she's here, but he's not, and Chris Gregor is the reason he isn't here. I often wonder what or how we will explain to my granddaughter that Corey isn't here. Do we tell her his father killed him so then she can wonder if that's what daddies do? Your Honor, Corey also wanted a father, but instead he got this monster who ridiculed him, deprived him of food, love, compassion, and beat him and abused him daily until his final beating on April 2nd, 2021. Your Honor, Corey knew he was going to die. On the Sunday prior to Corey's death, just 5 days before his death, Corey was at my house and preparing to take a bath. When he undressed, he was covered in bruises in various stages of healing. One stuck out because it was very large, and it was on the left side of his chest. I had to turn away so Corey didn't see the tears in my eyes. Once Corey was dressed, we sat in my bed. Corey looked at me and he said, "Hey, Gima, does God see what my daddy does to me?" I told him God sees everything. His voice got very low. He said, "Why doesn't he help me?" My heart was breaking as I told him that God was helping someone else who needed him more right now. Corey then asked why his daddy wasn't going to hell. And I replied, "He will someday." That same Sunday, Corey was outside writing with chalk on the sidewalk. Later in the day, Brianna and I noticed that Corey had written, "I died," near our front door. Corey's curiosity about God, heaven, and death grew prior to his death. On April 2nd, when Corey was getting ready to go back to Chris Gregor's house, I told him, "Take my cell phone and hide it and call when, not if, when his dad beats him." He said, "Gima, I can't." I told him to run to a neighbor, to which he replied, "I can't." His little face so serious. Corey knew nobody could help him. He knew he was going to die, and he accepted it. Your Honor, my conversation with Corey 5 days prior to his death and the day of his death will forever haunt me. My family was not allowed to be with Corey as he took his last breath because this man wouldn't tell us where Corey was. We weren't allowed to see Corey after he passed at the hospital because he was now evidence. My 6-year-old grandson was dead and now labeled evidence. This is what I have to live with every single day. Corey was taught in preschool by a lovely teacher, Kristen Oyen, that actions have consequences. Please teach this man that his actions have consequences. On May 1st, 2014, Corey Travis Micciolo was born. I was there holding Brianna's hand, and I was there to cut Corey's umbilical cord. When he was placed in my arms for that very first time, I whispered, "Hi, baby. I'm your grandma. I'll love you and protect you forever." Your Honor, I wasn't able to keep my promise to protect Corey, so I'm begging you to give Chris Gregor the harshest punishment possible today. Corey Travis Micciolo loved the solar system. He loved to draw. He loved his mommy and his family. He was smart and funny. He loved helping others. Corey wanted a daddy, but instead he got this monster, Chris Gregor. Your Honor, please give Corey justice today. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And Brianna, we haven't talked since Corey passed away. With everything that has been said, I just want to tell you that I'm sorry that you lost Corey. He was, to say simply, the best. I know we'll miss him for the rest of our lives. And the 2 years that I knew Corey were very difficult, but they were the greatest years of my life. And he was a happy, energetic, loving, radiant young boy who flourished in his life in all aspects the last year of his life. And sorry. That will be how I remember him. And Corey, wherever you are, I just want to say that I'm proud of you and everything that you did. The last months of his life, us three, Brianna, Corey, and me, we spent more time together than apart. All those hikes and walks, trips to the beach, time spent playing football and all the other sports, going to Sky Zone, the park, the playground, sledding, and all of that, I saw how much Brianna loved Corey, how much he loved her, and how well we could co-parent together. Those memories and all the good times, they'll be what I remember, and they helped me get through the tough days. And I hope that they can help you too, Brianna. I'm sorry you believe I could have done this to our son, and it pains me to know that you view my actions those months together as ingenuine, that I could have hurt the most important person in my life. What happened on March 20th was inexcusable. To you, Brianna, your family, and mine, I want to apologize that you had to see Corey treated that way. He never deserved it. I understand this single moment will overshadow all of the others, but it's not representative of who I am, who Corey was, and his relationship with me and him. I want to assure you that on April 2nd, I did nothing to cause Corey's passing. I didn't hurt my son. I loved him and I still do. I regret not bringing him to the hospital sooner. I didn't know how sick he was. I didn't know. I just thought he was tired. And whether you believe Dr. Bodden or Dr. Andrews' version of the events, the outcome is still the same. Corey is gone. He had so much to give this world, and he still can. What we do in his memory, for his memory, things that he would want us to do, that's all we have now. To the court staff, sheriff officers, to the jury, and to you, Your Honor, thank you for being professional through this whole process. I understand you have a job to do today, Your Honor. Sentence me for the crimes I've been convicted of today. I ask that you please consider all of the evidence presented in and out of this courtroom when making your decision today. I ask you to sentence me fairly, taking into consideration my entire life, and not just based on the 12 days. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Corey's repeated falls on the video, what can be really described as the child being ejected off the video, almost like on a conveyor belt. And I remember the reaction from the jurors when they first saw it. They sucked in their breath when they saw that. And then after Corey falls repeatedly, and then they walk out, there's no loving interaction. There's no pat on the back. Good job, son. There's no hug. Are you okay, son? There's nothing. In fact, the defendant walks out and Corey is trailing behind him, having to grab the door himself. And I'm not denigrating Corey when I say that, but he's being treated by the defendant like he's the stray dog following along. So while I respect the character letters I received saying what a loving father he is, a picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 10,000 words. So whatever happened that day, Corey was not receiving love or companionship or kindness or support. He wasn't even receiving what could be described as a tough father was going to raise him to be a man. Get back on the bike when you fell off. That was abuse of the most egregious sort.